Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
Hi Raj.
Vishal,
How's it going?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks for coming all the way.
This is crazy. What is this? Puppy!
Here's my dog. This is Ernie.
Hi, puppy. Hi, Ernie.
This is Ernie.
Ernie, can you smell all the dogs on my body?
Oh, you got dogs?
Yes. I got 4 right now.
Oh, fantastic.
Cats.
Oh, amazing.
Should I take off my shoes?
This is going to be like probably an obnoxiously long answer to that question because I actually got into photography when I was a teenager. After being like a really not artistically inclined person, I discovered photography to impress a girl, basically, and got myself an SLR and would go around Hong Kong taking like street photography, trying to get like 50mm lens, just capturing what my like angsty teenage brain thought of as like this rare beauty to the city, you know, like these, like the architecture, like these random street scenes and things like that. And I got really into that. But this was, you know, before digital cameras got really good. It was just at the beginning of that. And once that started to happen, I got a digital camera and I stopped taking photos because back when I had the analog SLR, it would be like quite a big deal when I got to go to, say, the Photomax and I'd develop all the film and it was like Christmas, you know, and you get like 30 films and only 1 or 2 of them were good and that would be super satisfying. But with the digital, I take a picture, it's on my little screen, that's it. That's all it was to it. It like kind of ceased to exist. So I kind of dropped photography, but I started like really loving it. Like my room growing up was literally, my wall was just blue tacked photos all across it, all over the place. I loved it. And so like, now, since then, my partner, she loves taking photos. She loves being on Instagram. Whenever we travel, I'm like sometimes the Instagram boyfriend. And it's like become a little bit too, not disposable. I think I'm trying to think of the right word for it. Like almost too commonplace to have images everywhere of pictures of everything, like pictures of every meal before you eat it and things like that. And it's kind of not put me off photography, but it's kind of made me almost like taking it too much for granted. And it's only when I see, like, I have a friend who's a photographer and he takes these amazing shots of people, but he like goes through a lot of effort. Like he gets models, he sets up the lighting, and he does these kind of art pieces. And then I see something like that and I'm like, oh, that's what I loved about photography, is when you create something new. But it's become so commonplace in a way that I've become like a little bit inured to it. You know what I mean? It doesn't have the magic it once held for me. So yeah, whereas my partner loves photography and takes pictures of everything. So yeah, it's my obnoxiously long answer.
First of all, thank you for welcoming me to your home. I assume this is your home and you're not, you know, I'm not
squatting here?
hostage.
No,
okay.
no.
We're in Hong Kong. This part of town is, what's it called? Mount Davis.
Mount Davis Road, Pak Phulam.
Pak Phulam,
Yeah.
very nice. The view behind me is nuts. Little puppy, you have a puppy, big and
little
beautiful.
Ernie, little
Super
big
nice.
boy.
So how do I say your full name? So it's Vishal?
Vishal Nanda.
Nanda, okay.
I usually go by Vish.
Vish, okay.
Yeah.
Vishal. Great. What does Vishal mean?
It's I tried to ask my parents. I found it a bit difficult to translate. It kind of means like big,
Okay.
but or like great, or like I guess
Okay,
is what you
grand.
call your kid. Grand,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
grand's another translation. But in India, it's so common. It's like the equivalent of John.
Okay.
So it's like literally one of the most common Indian names you can
Okay.
have.
Vish, Vishal. Yeah,
Yeah.
nice. Thank you for welcoming me. So the structure of the podcast is kind of strange. I haven't looked at the photos that you sent
cool.
over. I don't know anything about you. I'm going to discover who you are.
Oh, wow.
We'll find something to talk about for sure. I love your energy. I love where we are, what's happening.
I'm glad. I was like super nervous. So.
But then when you meet me, you're just
Yeah,
like,
you're
oh,
like
it's
so
just that guy.
friendly.
It's
You're
just
so
that guy.
friendly. Oh my
Yeah,
god,
yeah.
this is
So
cool guy.
when
I can see why you do this.
Yeah,
like you're like you
when
put
people-
people at ease.
Okay, oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Well,
Yeah.
people are. I hook you in, but then I crush you.
And then you crush it. Like.
Okay, so what it is it's a screenshot of maybe you have the full photo later, but it's the photo itself is taken at night, super dark. It looks like Hong Kong, maybe Kennedy Town sort of area. Very, very dense, low rise, kind of like low rise, maybe the 10 stories. On the roof, on the balcony, it's super underexposed. What's well exposed is the street below. It's at night, so there's a lot of dark. And there's a lone figure with a hand in his pocket, standing by. You can't see very much about this person. Really nice calf muscles on this person.
I'll tell him.
Yeah.
I know who he is.
No, okay, it's very nice. Yeah, so this is great. Okay, so why are we starting with this photo?
So that's the cover photo for my first poetry collection, which I launched pretty recently, like last December.
Congrats.
Thank you. Was it last December? Was it the December before that? I've got a terrible memory. It was a December in the last 2 years.
This has been an intense post-pandemic year.
I have the worst memory, to be honest with you. But anyway, the photographer I was mentioning during my long thing about photography earlier, whose photographs I really like. This is his. His name's Roman Olenchuk. I can't pronounce his last name. And that's him in the photo. He takes photos of Hong Kong, or set in Hong Kong.
Nice.
Though he himself is Ukrainian, he moved here a few years ago. And I was trying to find something for the cover of my book because the publisher that I'm with is quite an indie sort of thing. So they let you handle all the cover art and everything like that.
Okay.
And I was looking through this guy's collection because he's my favorite photographer that I know of in Hong Kong, right? And this one stood out to me. There were a few, but this one stood out to me the most because the name of the collection is "Please Stand Back from the Platform Door."
Right.
And
Excellent.
I was born in Hong Kong, and it's all Hong Kong related poetry.
Okay.
And a lot of it is on the theme of mental health or struggling with mental health issues.
Oh.
And a lot of it's it's not fully negative or pessimistic, but there's a lot of it sort of the toxic influence of things about Hong Kong, like the consumer culture and the pressure to succeed and hierarchical society and things like that. So this photo, for me, it's beautiful first aesthetically. You see this night scene in Hong Kong. I think it's somewhere in Kowloon. He told me which street, but I don't recall which one it was. Okay. So it's aesthetically quite beautiful because you get the night scene of Hong Kong, right? But the guy to me is very ambiguous because he is on the one hand just observing everything and kind of taking in the scene. But there's also the implication that he's on a place with no barrier.
And
that is not he could
off.
jump off. Yeah, exactly. He could fall, he could jump off. What's he going to do, right?
So,
why is he there?
Please stand back from
the platform door.
Door. So anybody who's taken the MTR or the metro or the subway in Hong Kong, you always have that reminder that nanny-ish kind of thing, stand back. Okay, it's good. It's good. Definitely something you pay attention to. You were born in Hong Kong, grew up in Hong Kong, sound like a Canadian.
Yeah.
have a phrase on the MTR is strongly British, as far as accents go. You imagine this matronly British woman saying, "Please stand back from the platform screen door."
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
And then it's this impending moment where this guy could very easily end his life. You dropped the phrase of mental health, which, for good or bad or whatever, it has a lot of consciousness in society and culture now. So why don't you talk about how that book emerged and
Okay, so I write a lot of poetry. Been writing since I was 13.
Oh wow.
But that, I think in a weird way, everyone was writing poetry when they were in high school, right? You write one thing or two things. I always wanted to be a writer. That's been my lifelong aspiration. And in terms of poetry, I started going to an open mic spoken word group called Peel Street Poetry in Hong Kong. I think you interviewed my friend Henrik, right?
Yes,
He's MC.
yes, that's
I grew up with him, went to high school together.
Nice.
And he invited me to this open mic 10, 15 years ago now. It's been a while. And then I'd start going every week. And the first week I went there, I was super nervous because I had my one poem that I thought was my life's soul poured into it and was super nervous to read it. And then read it out loud and no one burst into tears and there was no standing ovation, even though this poem meant the world to me. And I sat down, some other guy went up. And it was kind of freeing to be like, oh, here's a group of people that just do this every week.
Yeah,
like this isn't that big a deal, you know? I can come here and I can show this stuff to like-minded people. And because of that, I started going, it was every Wednesday of the week, except the first Wednesday, which is another group called Out Loud. And I would go almost every week for 15 years. I'd say like 75% of the time. And I started writing a new poem every single week.
Nice.
Was like the goal I set myself, or like at least every 2 weeks. So I've ended up with like hundreds of poems because of that. And it's developed into a style now, which is like kind of comedic and very spoken word, and not very like traditionally poetic, I suppose. Like a lot of people, well, I've like multiple times had people hear something I performed and be like, that was really good. But have you ever thought of writing poetry?
I love it.
I'm like, okay, if you say so, man. Like, I guess. Nope, never thought of it.
Okay.
And sorry, again, a long answer. And before I started writing all the funny stuff and like the stuff that a lot of it's due to mental health, I had a lot of poems about Hong Kong and about the toxic culture. And I'd written that over the course of like 10, 15 years in different bursts. Like none of it was in one specific time period. And this collection is basically a compilation of this series of poems over a very long period of time, including like one of those I wrote when I was like 15.
Okay.
But they're all on the theme of Hong Kong, and the please stand back from the platform door sort of title is this idea also that it's like a bit of a concept album, like that's a train journey. So you start at one point, which is kind of like being introduced to Hong Kong, introduced to me and my psychology, because the first one's all about like talking about me growing up, but using the analogy of a building being built, a skyscraper. So, you know, I was built in certain ways, blah, blah, blah. And then it goes through like, you know, watching people in Admiralty Station in their suits and feeling like, oh man, like that's what like a real man is, and I should be like that, and being like overwhelmed by the advertisements and the pressure and things like that. And like, you know, this whole journey of like a train journey, like going through Hong Kong, like going through the psychological field of Hong Kong, or whatever you want to call it. So the poetry collection focuses purely on very, very, very much Hong Kong themed. And I would like to get published by like, you know, a large publisher someday in Hong Kong, but there's, not in Hong Kong, just globally. In Hong Kong, there's very few. The one that published me is Proverse Publishing. And I thought, okay, I've got all these poems that are very, very specific to the city. They probably wouldn't get published internationally, or it's less likely. So why don't I put it all together and get it published by a local publisher for a local audience, who will understand all the references and the feel of the place. And obviously, like, when I say it's about Hong Kong, what I really mean is it's about my very specific version of Hong Kong.
Of course.
Like, because you, as you said, like, I sound Canadian. I went to an international school, which is for relatively privileged individuals, to be completely honest with you. It's a very far cry from, like, the local school, Chinese local situation and story. I can't read Chinese. So I have this very specific take on Hong Kong, and that's what's in the collection.
Let me invite you to take a big breath.
I sometimes talk fast.
No, it's great. No, it's not great. Also to point out that each time you say sorry to me, Ernie?
You're going to kick Ernie?
No, of course, crazy. No, she takes a little poo. So the more you say sorry, the less poo there'll be in the room. Okay, so, but to get back to since we're not meeting each other, my growing up in Montreal, Canada, was very much geared to scientific development, learning science, pure applied science, all that stuff. And then got into college, and then thought, oh, wait a second, I'm going to do a lot. The thinking I'm doing in creative writing is a lot more engrossing. So I went and got my first degree in creative writing, with a focus on poetry.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
So I wasn't writing poetry when I was younger. I started doing it really when I was in my 20s. Okay, so there's that. From what you said, this idea, I think in one of the, maybe it'll be in the audio too, it'll be kind of funny.
Oh my God, there's a small dog, he just yaps all day long, and dude. I don't know why. I think they leave him there or something. I constantly are like, maybe I should go say something. I'm like, no, I'm way too.
It's okay.
Oh my God.
But the fascinating thing to me is that in your development, in your youth, we invariably look at our environment and want to protest it to a certain extent, because it's just like, what's this culture like, and I'm going to bristle against it, and then because the same things that you were describing about being in Hong Kong, were very much how I was in my 20s, when the sort of the poetry that I wrote and the spoken word performances that I did.
Oh, so you did like spoken word style performances. Oh, that is awesome. Because that's exactly what I do.
So, and often would get. In fact, I would aim for people saying to me, "Is that poetry?"
Yeah.
It was different.
It's like a badge of honor, right?
Yeah, just kind of. So, okay, so we've got this photo. We've got it's your first poetry book?
My first poetry collection.
Okay,
yeah,
nice.
that's published. Yeah.
Okay. People can order it online?
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon.
Oh.
So you can order it there. You could come to my house and I'll give you one of the like 100 copies that I have.
One of the things that is quite fascinating to me, so in the sense that on the one hand, it's this idea that, well, it's really specific to Hong Kong. It's really like tied to the place. So maybe it's better if it's really for the local audience, not necessarily for like an international reader might not be so interested. On the flip side, maybe somebody in Peru will be like, I'd love to know what Hong Kong is all about. And then they realize, just by listening to this podcast, that here you are, you're a Hong Konger, full on, you grew up here, this is your home, and your experience of the city is as credible and authentic as any could be. So I find both those realities can exist,
Yeah, it's true. And you can find the universal and the specific, right?
Sure.
Like you just said about Montreal, you wrote about similar themes.
Yeah.
You could argue that just Hong Kong is just a hyper-capitalist society, so it's exemplar of so many different places as well.
Yeah.
And kind of like that foreigner in your own city experience, the kind of ethnic minority experience that you'd have when you're just not part of the majority population. So yeah, it definitely has like things that I hope appeal to everyone.
Sure.
Or a lot of people at least. But you just get an insight into Hong Kong. Yeah.
Vish.
Yeah.
Vishal.
Vishal.
Do you have a middle name?
No.
Okay, neither do I. Doesn't matter. Okay, so this is an illustration. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so what it is a figure that is androgynous, potentially female, wearing these kind of... Okay, so the background is this like coniferous kind of thing. It could be like the color palette is a lot of blues, very cool, white. There's like the hints of these coniferous trees, but it's all in silhouette. And this figure is wearing all the color palette's all browns, except for the eyes, which are the same kind of icy blue. Has a kind of a sword, I think. Looks like one of those sort of travelers in a fantasy kind of space, holding what could be a samurai sword / lightning bolt. It's kind of got a cartoony feel in the sense that there are different layers of how you'd compose the kind of the scene. Is it manga-esque, or how would you say it?
Yeah, it's like a random person's illustration, so it doesn't come from any book or any anything specific.
So
that's not fan fiction or fan art.
So it's not that you didn't make this?
Nope.
Okay, so when I get sued,
yeah,
I'm coming for you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just joking. Okay, so why this one?
So this was done by someone on a subreddit on reddit.com.
Okay.
So I'm bipolar. It's one of the reasons I write about mental health is because I myself was diagnosed as bipolar about 10, 12 years ago.
Oh, okay. Fascinating.
And this comes from the bipolar subreddit, one of the bipolar subreddits on reddit.com. And it was someone who had been very depressed for quite a while. And then they drew this remarkable picture because a lot of people process their episodes or their periods of being down or up with art. And I commented on this one and a whole bunch of other people did. The person responded to me. We had like a short sort of like conversation. And it really struck me because, it's a bit weird, but I told the person that like, there are different ways of trying to imagine the mental health struggle because it is in some ways trying to overcome something about your innate nature or something that, you have that's keeping you down in some way or it's affecting you, whatever. And so I told them that like, this picture is kind of like you, man. Like after dealing with all of this, your blue blade literally there is like your positivity and all your tactics that you've been using in this battle to hold back this negativity and this overwhelming mental health condition.
Yeah.
And they were like, thanks. They were like, yeah, man, that's like where he's like, you know, like, can I swear in this thing or not really, right? Or yeah. Or
This podcast is listened to only by children who are 4 years old.
That's what I thought.
So no, go fuck. Shoot.
So like, fuck yeah, man. I was like, she was like, fuck yeah, that is totally it. And you know, we did like a virtual fist bump basically. And it was. I talk to a lot of bipolar people because I'm also an ambassador for Mind HK, the mental health charity.
Oh, okay.
So I've done like mental health related events. I recently did a mental health poetry event. It was our first Peel Street poetry event that was dedicated purely to mental health, and we had ambassadors from Mind HK who have basically outed themselves as people who struggle with mental health things just so they can talk about it, normalize it, get rid of the stigma.
Right.
And they all wrote poems and they performed it.
Nice.
They weren't the regular poets. In the end, I couldn't make the event because I was sick, funnily enough. Again, they process it through art, but there's a universal almost vocabulary that people I have never met that have the same condition as me have, where they'll talk about things like how these voices are like demons in their heads. Like they externalize the voices. The voices aren't them because they are saying things that are like literally at worst kill yourself.
Right.
And even at best when you're manic, like do really dumb shit or like, I don't know, Kanye, run for president, right? So anyway, this was like, this really struck me because I was like, yeah, this is you, man. Like this is you. This is how I feel sometimes, and it's its own sort of like heroic manifestation of overcoming this struggle. And like I like the symbolism a bit. I wrote a poem once when I was really high about after an acid trip. Where now that I know I can say whatever I want, where I like imagined I'd met Ganesh, the Hindu god, except he had he gave me a sword, but the sword was like this blue crystal blade that looked like something from Final Fantasy, the video game series. Yeah. And he like explained to me how this was like a mental tool for dealing with your depression.
Nice.
And it was and so I don't know, man, like, so the blue blade, I was like, the whole thing resonates with me.
So one of the things that the connections I'm making, well, one, in terms of the illustration, if you look at the color palette, it's pretty much sort of separated into like one set, which are blues, and one, it's very cool. So it's a lot of blues, and there's not pure black, but there's kind of black, and then the other set is the warm brown tones, right? So the figure is brown. Standing on brown ground,
almost grass. Orange, right?
Yeah. So it's orange to brown. Yeah. The figure has the oh look, it's the Hong Kong bird.
Oh yeah, the kite. Yeah.
No, the jackhammer.
Oh, the jackhammer. Because we do get a lot of kites here too. Yeah. Our old friend.
It actually happened when I was recording with Heinrich as well.
Oh God.
It's kind of funny. Okay, but yeah. So there's that, and now in terms of.
We kind of like get a binary thing going, which is also like the bipolar thing. You know, you have two sides, two colors.
In terms of a convergence, like a previous guest, just a couple, 2 or 3 guys, Katie Love. Her name's Katie Love. And her mom, she suspected her mom was bipolar. And her mom killed herself when Katie was 9. And Katie was the one who found her. And she went into stand-up comedy.
Huh.
So it's interesting how, to me, convergence of ideas and of people and all this stuff, you know, the soundscape is great. Just convergence of people and ideas is fascinating to me because on some level it's influenced because of, you know, who I reach out to and how we met. And then somehow, if we did a Venn diagram or whatever, it would all kind of make sense. But that image is way too complex for me to decode. So I'm just like, so to me, it's like almost this random encounter with you, but it's not
what
totally
connects us
random.
All together, right?
Yeah.
Like this train,
Okay, so this is kind of how my questions go. I just talk for a while and then I say, now you take it from there. Here's the baton. Where do we go in terms of mental health, in terms of artistic expression, in terms of how you want to put yourself into the world?
it's like one of those things that I like don't really think about. I just kind of do, I guess. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, but I feel like so with Mind HK, they have this thing about stigma.
Okay.
And mental health stigma, like negative beliefs about people and about mental health. Like, I think the most common one is that it's your fault and it's a lack of willpower and it's a weakness and you're crazy and you should hide it.
Right. Especially in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
I mean,
especially in Hong Kong. Like, statistically, it's huge numbers of people that believe that.
Exactly. And well, so I'm interrupting, I know, but the reason is because for a listener non-Hong Kong, you think, because, you know, if your frame of reference is in the US or UK or Canada, or wherever, these nations that have a slightly more developed understanding of mental health, you're probably separated from, in Hong Kong, yes, you really do have the sense that it has to be hidden.
Yeah. And even though it's better in the US and the UK, I still think there's a big gap between the ideal level of understanding we should have about mental health and where we are. Because, like, I'll give you an example. Kanye West gets so much freaking hate recently because he does really dumb, stupid things. And he's racist towards Jews, apparently. He's anti-Semite, apparently. And he tried to run for president. Now, like, not saying he's not an asshole, right? Like, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But the problem is that when he's in the throes of a bipolar, unmedicated bipolar experience, there are literally classic manic symptoms that pretty much fit exactly his behavior, right? Like, he is too powerful and too rich and has no one that's moderating or is control of his life, right? And so, like, when I hear about all this stuff with him, I think anti-Semitism is pretty bad. But at the same time, I can't help but feel empathy for this guy and feel like he's a sick person.
Fighting a battle.
He's fighting his own battle. And people just hate him. Like, there is so much hate on Twitter for him.
But Twitter isn't real people. Twitter is just people sitting in their toilet going, meh.
Yeah, that's but the problem is it drives the dialogue. Because they're the noisiest people, right? So then it becomes part of the zeitgeist. Like, and so even if you don't write on Twitter yourself, you find yourself responding to it, and some people end up agreeing. So it's like, I totally agree. Like, most people don't necessarily, like, the silent majority don't necessarily post all this crap, right? But it still drives the dialogue, unfortunately. And like, and we've always liked to scapegoat, right? We've always liked to mock someone. So, you know, he gets a lot of mockery on the one hand, and a lot of hate. I'm not saying, you know, save Kanye, but it's still exemplar of how we look at mental health.
Let's be compassionate.
Yeah, exactly. Like actually though, right? Like, because if you experience something like that, you are humbled by the power the mind has over you and your brain.
Oh, for sure.
And I think it, like, fundamentally shifts the way that you look at yourself and your choices and your behavior on a very basic level. And there's a struggle between self, whatever that is, and your nature, whatever that is, and defining what the self is in the first place. Like, am I the guy that did, especially bipolars, like, am I the guy that did that dumb shit last night? Or am I the guy that regrets doing that dumb shit last night and now feels depressed? Or am I the guy observing all this crap? Like, you know what I mean? Like, which one am I? I don't know.
Now, here's this to put into your noodle. I was run over by a car.
Oh, wow.
And I had severe brain injury.
Oh, wow.
And so I was paralyzed, I was in a coma.
Oh, my God.
And then I had a period of amnesia, which of course I don't remember. So let's say about 2 months.
Wow.
I don't remember. But I was talking and everything.
Huh.
And I can remember coming out of the amnesia in little kind of, it's like coming out of a fog or whatever.
Yeah.
So then the big question, the existential question that raised was, well, where was I? Because I was talking to people and I was doing stuff and I was responding, but where was the me now that's remembering? Because I said things and I did things that were not in character. But then, so how was that identity shaped? Right? Okay. Now, from my own experience with anxiety and, you know, at some point, not everybody, maybe most people, maybe everybody hits rock bottom.
I think so. Yeah.
And then you
Whatever
look
that
back
is for them.
and you see yourself and you're like, I don't recognize myself. That was me.
Yeah.
So as an ambassador to bridge between, I mean, are you bridging people who are within the bipolar sort of struggle to just make sense of their lives? Or are you bridging from the other direction of people who go like, what's the big deal? I don't get it.
I think both. Like, on the one hand, I'm trying to, like, reach kindred spirits and basically tell them you're not alone and your experience isn't your fault, and these things are explainable, and these things are treatable, like to some degree. I mean, it's very tricky. But on the other hand, I'm also appealing to people that know people like that, their family members, their friends. And once you hit that level, you have almost everyone, to be honest, right? Very few people have, at this point, not been touched or known someone that has struggled in some sense with these things, right? But then you're also, and this is the toughest crowd of all, you're reaching the people that are just freaking prejudiced, and they just, they just believe certain things. They're kind of stuck in their ways. I don't know if it's possible to build a bridge with those people, or at least I'm not diplomatic enough to do something like that, but you normalize something by talking about it.
Yep.
Even if people disagree with you.
Like here.
It's just visible. Just the visibility alone does something, right?
Absolutely.
So at the very least, bringing up the subject and talking about what it's like and showing someone, this is a person who has this problem, this disease. Look, they aren't batshit crazy and trying to stab you in the face, right? Like, they are your friends. They are your... I mean, this applies to any minority identity that people have a prejudice towards, right? Like... especially, I think things like LGBTQ people as well that had to normalize their identities for other people, and they still have in a lot of places. But so trying to do all of it, I guess, at the same time. But when I say trying, man, I just like a lot of it is just talking about my own experiences, my own story, and what I know. I'm not like a trained mental health professional either, and I'm not like I don't know. I don't feel like I'm like a super articulate, whatever. But like,
You're doing just fine. You're doing
thanks,
fine.
buddy. Thanks, buddy.
I love it.
That's why I love writing poetry and performing, because I have my own sort of like little social anxieties. You could tell I keep apologizing, right? I keep fucking apologizing.
You're
because
practically Canadian.
I'm practically Canadian. I sound Canadian. I act Canadian. I should go to Canada. But I love performing because I get to, in a weird way, be myself more, because then I don't have someone else that I'm always worried about and I'm always reacting to. And then I just get to do my piece that I've spent time on and written. And I write a lot of my, not a lot, but a fair amount of my poetry I've written while I've been depressed or while I've been a little bit manic. And when I first started doing that, it was just like, life is shit, life is crap, like over and over again in different ways, right? But now it's become a lot more controlled, and I'll sometimes start writing something to actually make myself not depressed, and it'll begin with all this unhappiness and struggle, and it'll end with hope, or it'll end with this positive energy. And people like those ones.
Well, it's also, it's, I think what it does is it shows that you're using the medium, whatever it is. It could be photography, it could be poetry, it could be cooking, whatever, to wrap your head around this sort of tension or this struggle. I'm afraid we're going to have to move on to the next photo.
That whole question of how do you want to present yourself to the world? It's like one of those questions where if you wake up in the morning and you think it, you're like, oh my God, fuck my life.
Well, it's also,
how do I want to present myself to the world?
It's I put you on the spot, and it's not fair. But
no, it's good. It's something to think about.
But it also, it's also interesting because what emerges. So, people like I write and work in copywriting, and people say, oh, well, can you write me something, and I'll write it. And they'll come back to me the next day and they say, what do you think of this? And I'll be like, well, I'll change this and change that. And they say, yeah, but you wrote this yesterday. Shouldn't it be okay? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, ask me any day of the week, my opinion will change. And shouldn't you have the permission and the latitude to decide to reinvent yourself? So, for example, when I say, how do you want to put yourself to the world? Well, right now, it could be right now, ...
Change tomorrow, right? What kind of poetry do you write?
I haven't in a long time. I live my poetry. How's that? And it's more about it's about being in the creative moment. There's this beautiful photo of you with a full beard. So it's inside a
dope
club.
Jacket. I like that jacket.
Very dope jacket. You're holding up a bottle of Prosecco. Yeah. How do I know?
Prosecco.
How do I Prosecco?
You could tell from that vague picture.
Yeah, okay.
You're an alcoholic, aren't you?
I only dabble.
Dabble in alcohol.
You've got an envelope under your arm. There's a very nice looking woman to your right. She has this nice bright smile. The photograph seems like it was just made like off the cuff by somebody, maybe at a reading. I'm going to guess this is during the launch of your book.
It is not, but it is in the same space.
Okay.
So you're close it's a poetry thing. So like you're totally right there. I wish people gave me a bottle of champagne when I launched my book. So this is at Social Room.
Okay.
During our Peel Street Poetry, one of our nights. This was our, not our 10th anniversary. I think it was our 11th or 12th anniversary. And every November when we have our anniversary, we have a slam competition.
Nice.
It's our only slam competition of the year. And the format is you get 10 minutes and a prompt, you write something, you perform it. So it's not like off the dome, but it's pretty close,
nice.
right? And this is the year that I won.
Wicked.
And yeah, which was because I placed final in like a lot of them, but I never won until this night. And this night was special to me for many reasons. That's Victoria. Now she is a regular goer to Peel Street Poetry.
Okay.
And she is probably one of my favorite performers and writers there.
Oh, nice.
She's so fantastic. She also writes about mental health.
Okay.
I don't want to share too many details about that because I feel like I should. That's for her to do.
Yeah,
but
that's her world,
she does write a lot about it. We have a lot in common, and she's a lot younger. And she has this amazing frenetic energy when she performs. And this night was the first night she'd come to Peel Street Poetry, and she participated in the slam. And her poem was about how we ignore people who have mental health problems.
Okay.
And we like just turn away from them. We don't really pay attention to them.
Right.
But they are it's real and it's very difficult. And I remember when she performed that, I was very touched because I felt like, yo, this is one of my people, right? Like this is one of mine. And we're kindred like that, right? And then I went and I did mine, and it was some funny piece for the first round. There's only 2 rounds, and I final passed it, whatever, got to the last 5 people, and then we were given a prompt, and I had like no idea what to write. Like I was like completely blanking on what to write because the first round took it out of me. And then I remembered her poem because it was the only one that actually hit me.
Yeah.
Because you know this as a creative writer, right? It is very easy to bullshit and no one will ever know. Like you can write something that you don't believe in, you don't feel, you don't care about, but aesthetically it looks good and people will never know, right? Okay. But there's like a certain authenticity. You can be true to what you actually say and believe it as well. And maybe people will tell, maybe they won't, right? So what she said really, really actually resonated with me. And I made this decision on the spot where I'm like, man, I never fucking win this thing. I'm not going to write a piece that I think is popular. Like, I'm not going to write like a crowd pleaser or like something that's just technically impressive or something. I just want this person and people like her to know that we're the same.
Okay.
And so I wrote my piece and I used lines from her poem.
Oh, okay.
As like a callback. I used the exact same lines multiple times as a callback to her. And I the poem is somewhere, and I don't remember the exact lines. I've got it somewhere. But when I was done, I went off, people clapped, whatever, and I was like, just kind of made peace. And I was like, yeah, okay, I don't win, but that was worth doing.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Like, I got value out of it.
Yep.
And then I freaking won somehow.
Nice.
And I found out later on that one of the judges said that it was the emotional honesty of the piece that was what made them want to do it. They said the other ones, some of them were technically impressive. That was honest and very powerful in that sense. And it was like a very important moment for me because firsthand, it's very validating. I got to win. I got recognition, which is lovely. And I get to say I'm a slam champion, at least in Hong Kong, right? But I got to do it by being authentic and real about something I actually care about.
Yep.
And inspired by a person that like speaks the same language as me, because obviously that poem would never have existed if she didn't have the guts for her very first time to come to this event to put herself out there and do her piece. It only exists because of her, right? So it's this, I guess, I don't know if I can fully take, but this is wonderful connection and power that came out of that. And it reminded me, it taught me a very important lesson that I sometimes forget, which is the most important thing I can do if I write something is to be authentic and true and try to reach people, as opposed to, because I do write funny stuff and I can write things that are just stupid crowd pleasers so people laugh and it makes me feel good, right? But then writing stuff like that is more important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a place for so long as it's authentic to what you're
just for me, by the way. Yeah,
moment.
no, for sure. This is literally how I see it for me. I don't judge other people for what they write. Like, everyone has their own way of doing it. So it's not like my rubric for like, this is how everyone should write. Fuck that. But like, it's just for me, like because I sometimes really struggle with what to write, because the whole thing, you write something new every week. That's a lot of freaking stuff to write, right? And I really struggle with when I'm feeling down, when I'm feeling insecure. Man, I just want to write something that like people are going to laugh and cheer and whoop and make me feel good about myself. Like literally as a pick me up, because it's so addictive. Because I've had like a few performances where I've been lucky enough that people really freaking like it, and they kind of go a bit crazy in the crowd, and it feels so good. It's like the biggest high. And it's like I want to chase that high. But it's like, it's also, what's the point? You know what I mean? It's just purely like jerking off. Like, I'm just making myself feel better. There's not as much value for me.
No. I completely appreciate that. And also, it's also what you need at that moment, right? So for example, if you're younger and if you're at a certain stage of your life where you need social proof and all that stuff, then you kind of write to please the audience, and because you want to look good and you want to be perceived as confident or as good, all those things. And that's what you need, let's say, in your 20s and 30s. Fine. But then if you're doing the same thing until you're like 40, 50, let's say until you're 70, you're still doing that, you're just like, you're probably, I mean, if you're maturing and if you're a truly creative person, your brain is going to want to go into, or you're going to eventually want to explore other territories. So here we have this photo, which is just this sweet moment. And
she said it meant a lot to her, which was very touching. Like, she came up to me, she told me it meant a lot to her and she wanted a picture. So
which is great, because
it was a good night.
So as you're saying this, one of the things I think about is that it's what's astounding really about creative acts, right? So for example, math and the sciences and all this stuff is there for us to discover. So if Einstein hadn't discovered the speed of light and its relationship to energy and mass and all this stuff, it's there for somebody else to discover. But for you two to meet and for those words to come together and for you to go on stage and to put out into the world is completely unique. Like that is the
magic.
Yeah, it is. It's totally magic. How shall we move on to the next? What's a segue to the next photo? How would you like to?
I don't remember what I gave you. I take a lot of medication, man.
Yeah,
and
no
it just like eviscerates my memory.
No. This is
like
here's what I think is what I think.
No idea what I sent you.
That's great, because
so
what it is it's from your life.
Yeah.
And in your head is a supercomputer, and in my head is a supercomputer, and somehow when we meet and we see these prompts that are from your life, you're going to create the meaning and the revelation for me.
I mean, what's funny is like when I sent it to you, I like wrote like this paragraph for each one where I'm like, okay, this is why I'm sending it. This is what I did. And then you were like, I don't read this stuff. Yeah. I do it at the spot. And I remember reading that and being like, oh, that's so much better. I was like, that's so much better than fucking like me like planning out what I was gonna. So I like this more.
Here we go. Look,
I don't even remember. Let's see what it is. Let's see. Oh, hell yeah! That's what I'm talking about. Oh, nothing to do with mental health. I mean, yeah, it's still positive mental health.
It's all in your brain. It's all part of your biography.
Dope.
Okay, so
this is where I ran out of things to say.
It's a photo of, it could be a collection of movies or books. And at the top, it says Pandemic Legacy. And below that, it's basically a stack of what could be books, but I would probably guess is movies. No, maybe not movies, probably books. So we've got Pandemic Legacy. And beneath that, it says Red Rising. And beneath that, Dune. And beneath that, Outer Rim. These are all titles that I know and I've seen. let's see. This is in a bookcase or something, or a shelf in your an
Yeah, it's right
apartment. Okay, so
right over there.
Okay.
I think.
What great things will we learn from this?
So these are board games, my friend.
Nice.
And it is because I love board games.
Okay.
I am deeply passionate about board games. And they make me
I
very
love
happy.
your passion.
Oh, I love board games. And I think when I sent this to you, I'm like, man, don't know if I'm like an interesting enough guy to be on a fucking podcast.
Yes, you are.
But I'm gonna wax lyrical.
Okay.
About the beauty of board games.
Okay.
And that's like gonna be my challenge to myself. Is like I'm gonna make this shit art, man. I'm gonna make it make it beautiful, right?
So what is a board game?
Wow. What isn't a board game, sir? No. You know, like when you're a kid, everyone plays board games. You play like Monopoly and fucking Snakes and Ladders.
Yeah.
Actually, you start with Snakes and Ladders, then you graduate to Cluedo or Clue, and then you end up playing Monopoly and flipping tables, and no one likes Monopoly, and we don't know why we play it. It's like some weird masochistic exercise that we all partake in.
Okay.
And that's it. And then like 25 years ago, some dude invented this game called Settlers of Catan, this German guy who passed away recently.
I've heard, okay, so I have heard of it. I got it for my daughter, and I look at it, and it never, okay, so talk to me about
So
Settlers
anyway,
of Catan.
basically, it's like a more complex game.
Okay.
It's like the way, it's like the same evolution with video games, how you have Pac-Man and Space Invader.
Yeah.
And now you have like freaking role-playing games with like stories and like skill trees and shit like that.
Yeah.
The evolution occurred for board games as well. And now there's this massive subculture of like really relatively complicated board games.
Right.
I mean, once you get into it, you don't think they're that complicated,
Yeah.
but like they are. Like
You have to learn the world. Yeah.
Like, well, like it like takes half an hour to teach some of these fucking games,
Sure,
and
sure.
if I could teach a game in 20 minutes, I'd be like, that's not that complicated.
Right.
I mean, there's one game, Twilight Imperium, 4th edition, which I tell people at parties, or if I was single, girls I want to hit on, that it is the Cadillac of board games.
Okay.
They love this shit. And then I'm like, I sort of smile at them, kind of like unbutton my top button, and I'm kind of like, yo,
So,
bro.
are you flirting with me?
No, stroke the back of their head if they give me consent to do so. And then I say, this game takes 12 hours to play.
Okay, nice.
In order to learn how to play it, you have to watch a 2-hour YouTube video.
What?
Yeah. And that's the speed way of learning how to play it.
Nuts.
And even after you watch that video, you probably won't know how to play it because that's a lot of information to digest.
Wow.
Yeah. But it's the Cadillac of board games, and everyone who liked board games should play it at least once.
Okay.
I play it like 25 times. It's amazing, but it's
Right.
a 12-hour experience. It is a marathon physical experience because you start at like 9:30, 10 a.m., and then you're like a dead person by the end of it. And in the last 4 hours, your
What a
decision
trip.
making's compromised, and like you could barely make. And it's basically a space epic.
Wow.
Like you choose an alien race, they choose alien races, and you like basically try to conquer the galaxy or create the best economy. It's like one of these games that tries to do everything at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like one of those like 5X video games, right? So anyway, that's just Twilight Imperium. But the point is that this is kind of like the spectrum, right? You got Settlers of Catan on one end, which is 15-minute game to learn. You got Twilight Imperium, there's 2 hours game to learn, and all of them are different experiences.
Right.
And the reason I want to wax lyrical about the beauty of board games, because mental health's like okay, right? But like board games, right?
Okay, you keep going. Here's what's interesting is that it's as a person just meeting you. Yeah, I get to reflect back to you what I see. So you go. I love it.
So like, I've always loved games.
Yeah.
Like they were my escape. Growing up, I was not a happy kid because I was undiagnosed as well. I was messed up, right? But video games were my escape.
Okay.
Like, and I grew up around the time that the internet was coming to the fore and my parents didn't understand it. So I played like online games for the first time with people. My friends were on the mic, we're talking to each other, we're hanging out.
Nice.
At the time, that was a new thing. Like that didn't exist as an experience, right? And older people had no comprehension of this whole experience, right? And that was my way of hanging out with my friends.
Yep.
More than like going to the mall or hanging out. It was this online experience, right?
Right.
And I loved video games, and I loved these online experiences. I went to university, I played like these massively multiplayer games like World of Warcraft. It was always video games. Until I was like in my mid-20s, and then someone introduced me to board games. I won't go into it, but tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, which I'm also very passionate about.
Yep.
And I realized that board games are just an amazing way to hang out with your friends.
Yeah, very social.
It's so social because you're around a table
Yep.
and you've come up with this excuse for a competitive activity
Right.
so you can socialize with them.
Yeah.
And as someone that's like kind of socially anxious at times, it is just a fantastic context
Yep.
in order to spend time with people.
Yeah.
And enter there's something very human about games and game making and creating like these rules with these objectives and these imaginary fantastical settings, and you get to just deep dive into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I freaking love board games, man. They're magical experiences. Like that one at the top, Pandemic Legacy Season 1. There's this game called Pandemic. It's quite popular.
Oh,
but
it's a reflection of the past 3 years? Yeah, I got it.
Fuck yeah, man. Actually though, right? Like might have caused it for all we know. Yeah. It's way too real.
Yeah.
It came out 5 years ago and it's literally, we've lived it.
That's nuts.
And Legacy Season 1 is like the company being like, let's create Pandemic, right?
Yeah.
But what if you played on the same board and the game just changed all the time? And we added stickers for each session and like the disease warped and there's a storyline. And it's this like weirdly ambitious, messed up thing where it's like, imagine playing Cluedo, except like you played the same game of Cluedo over and over again, but things changed. Like your investigator became smarter, or like the murder was never caught, or things like that. So it's a legacy game. It's a whole subgenre. And it's just brilliant stuff like that. They're all based, a lot of them are based on intellectual properties that I love. Like Red Rising is, Henrik loves this series as well. It's a sci-fi book series, and the game is based on that.
Yeah.
You got Star Wars, you've got Dune, my favorite novel of all time.
Of
I love Dune. It's my favorite novel. All these sort of like IPs that you get to fantastically be in. So this is just something that it's the thing that I, in terms of recreational activity, I look forward to the most in my life. I'm very lucky because my partner, my fiance, she loves board games relatively, maybe not as much as me because I'm a nerd as hell, but quite a lot. And she's very good at them as well. And so it's also a romantic activity. We'll crack open a bottle of wine, we'll lower the lights, get out a candle, play Dune Imperium.
So let's pull back a second and let's, in the sense of, okay, we're pulling back the focus, and I don't remember the name of this U.S. president who said, if you want to understand how to wrap your head around a problem, enlarge the problem. Right? Just keep pulling back and make it bigger and bigger. So just get a bigger perspective.
Good advice.
So in the same way, so here we have, some people play cards, some people play poker for like hours.
I was a professional poker player for a while.
No, you'd be the second, you are the second
Hedrick.
person. Yeah.
Okay. We learned together.
Nice. Nice. It's this idea that, okay, how do we make sense of the world, right? So in a way, the board game creates this, the rules and these boundaries where you're sort of interacting within those boundaries.
Yeah.
And in your particular case, this really fulfills a channel or a way for you to connect with others. Now, how do you connect writing, performing, mental health ambassador, your book, Please Stand Back from the Platform Screen Doors, great title for a book, and the event or the experience of a board game?
They're safe spaces.
Okay.
Because they have boundaries.
Right.
And a lot of my experiences are not. Like, I think on a psychic level, there's a lot of unsafe reality for me. And for perhaps a lot of people with mental health as a bipolar person.
Okay.
There are things that like a single sentence or a way someone looks at me can ruin my day and derail everything I want to do. So in a way, life is not safe, for me. Although I am physically well taken care of, mentally not so much. But places like the board games, the poetry, creating is at worst a safe space. Not always. Sometimes I get depressed doing these things. But at best, they are tools to overcome even what I go through outside of them. Like with poetry, being able to write about my experience and transform, say, pain into something more positive, right? That's powerful. But in the end, they're all safe spaces where I can also be myself. And I've always found that very, very difficult because I'm a habitual people pleaser and I'm very hypersensitive to how other people react to a neurotic extent. And so anything that takes me out of that and lets me be me
Yeah.
and authentically me and whatever the hell that is like a godsend for me. It's like all I want, to be honest. Like I just want to be like okay with being myself and being whatever the hell that is.
Nice. I hear it as well of you saying that, and having been myself in a situation with that dark place where just like I don't recognize myself. How do I get out of this hole? In a way, it gives you kind of a vacation. You know, okay, we're sitting around the table. You know, the world around us can fall apart, but for the next 12
boundaries. It's you know, when you were talking, I was thinking when you were talking about boundaries, and like that's what it is. In an unbounded life, you have spaces where you have rules and boundaries.
Okay.
Which are very comfortable. It's a very random sort of thing to say, but I think this applies to Asian culture, but it also applies to Western culture maybe 100 years ago. There are very specific etiquettes involved for social interaction, things you could and couldn't say, and in a way is very regulated. If you look at period dramas even now, you can see that these patterns of etiquette and these patterns of talking, we no longer have any of those things, which in a way is more freeing, but also these lack of boundaries make it scary for a lot of people to do things like just interact, right? Because there's so many, you don't know what to do, right? Unless you're very well socially calibrated.
Sure.
And we all have that to some degree.
Right.
So like more and more and more, we need safe spaces.
Okay.
Not for like necessarily the dialogue sense of safe space where we can talk about things,
Right.
but like literally, dude, you can't go online anymore without reading about how the world is ending, or like there's a massive culture war, or like there's a literal war. Like there's so much lack of safety in terms of like how we deal with relatively mundane shit, you know, like we're not physically at risk, but we're at risk of all these other things that make us really freaking miserable and neurotic. So yeah, having things like the board games, the poetry, the also creating something is just, it's kind of magical because you made something out of nothing, or you made something out of your experiences. It wouldn't have existed. I love what you said about discovery versus creation. I've never thought of it that way. That's so interesting.
I'm just a parrot.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, but isn't that interesting? Though?
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. That's very articulate. I like that.
Stuff
that's so interesting.
Is there to be discovered.
Is there to be discovered, yeah.
But the art that you create is really unique.
And it's like a lot of it was through a process of dealing with very human struggles, like fear, the fear of the unknown, or chaos and randomness and being unable to predict the future. And just like, which happens with a lot of art as well, like whether it's poetry or otherwise, it's the same process, but you create something different. Instead of an explanation for these things, because you add a spirit or a soul or something you can interact with, you create a story or you create a poem. So it's a very human process. So yeah, I totally agree. It comes from a very similar place, even if the outcome is different.
Right.
Whew.
I'm going to pause this now, and I'm going to ask you to find a poem if you're down, and then maybe end this conversation with you reading one of your pieces.
Is there any particular theme or
up to you? Whatever you like.
Okay,
run with it.
Cool. Okay, all right. It's called An Atheist's Prayer. I'm gonna Matthew McConaissance tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, wake up at 6 a.m., go for a run, hit the gym, meditate, eat some fucking kale, avoid all social media, read some articles, learn, work on your passion, get one step closer to the top of the mountain, hit the ground running, productive as hell. The morning of, my brain spun the roulette wheel, bet on red, came up black, and now I feel scared. I don't know what of or why. I guess I'm just scared of being alive. I want to skip all the way back to night, past the time like I'm in Skyrim. Is that air I'm breathing? I could really go for my own personal Morpheus. There is no spoon, or in other words, getting out of bed should be no big deal. But it feels like I just woke up in a war zone, even though the sky is blue. In my fridge, I've got food, I got clean water, a hot shower, I got a family too, and you do this every day, don't you? So why can't I? Balance the equation of depression. On one side is misery and inaction. On the other side must thus be that I gotta be so pathetic that I can't hack this. What's my excuse? Someone wrapped chains around my bed whilst I wasn't looking. That's gotta be it. They came in at night, broke down the door, shot me with a tranquilizer dart, lingering after effects of a break-in. The invisible chain gang. That's why I'm scared of nothing. like a child is scared of monsters under the bed. I have food, but I don't want to eat, and the not wanting, it must all be my responsibility. I stink, but I don't want to shower, because this stench is what I think I deserve to smell like I'm toxic, like I'm a vampire sucking the light out of everyone else's eyes. You can read the symptoms off in the DSM, or Google it. You can have a therapist tell you it's your brain playing tricks, you can be given pills and a diagnosis, but you also suspect that there are people that love you, that there are people you respect, who deep down or out loud say and think, what's wrong with him? And the litany of isn'ts, if onlys, if he just but sneers and laughs. Like I've fallen off the ladder somewhere in someone else's mind, a cautionary tale, a joke without a punchline, a failure. And if the mind reigns supreme, or because genetics, nature, nurture, who gives a shit, we'll never really know. But if the cards I'm dealt amount to a low blow that's got other people rolling their eyes, well then I'm going to perform a magic trick. If the mind reigns supreme, then I will meet my demons on that field, and I will build a church. Yes, I'm an atheist. There are no gods. When you die, it's game over, man. The problem of evil has no solution, but still, on some field, in some mental space, I lay the bricks of a church. Okay, shit, that's way too much effort. I mean, cathedrals are expensive, so how about a shrine? An altar? I lay stones on the ground, and I get on my knees, and I pray. I know, even the voices are shocked. They think it must be a joke, but no, in the face of all this horse shit, I, an atheist, prays. And my prayer is that there will be days that come with a storm in tow, and on those days my soul will for reasons unknown be laid low. But one day, the sun will rise with such glory, smog-free, an orgasm in space, and the clouds will shit rainbows out all over the place, and the blue sky will be how I feel inside one day. It's a weird prayer, right? But one day, I will wake up without fear in my heart. Instead, courage will rage through my blood with the drive of an army on the march to grab hold of every second of the day. I will carpe the diem like nobody's business. I will conquer my to-do list like Alexander, except I will actually be great one day. There will be no chains upon my bed. Gravity will reverse. I will grow wings, and I will fly out into the day, grow my own organic kale, eat avocado toast like a good millennial. And the minute hand will crawl, but the hours will soar. And I will smell the scent of my espresso, will taste the nutty notes, will take the cleanest poop, will feel so deeply alive because the opposite of depression is not happiness, it's vitality. And the opposite of darkness is light. On that day, one day, I will strive. There will be no task that I cannot overcome. There will be no email that will go unanswered. All effort will be rewarded, and all the work of all the years will burst out from the ground like a garden, will rocket skywards like some kind of crypto scam. All competitions won, all lessons taught, all promotions awarded, all points scored. One day, despite all the days that came before, I will be standing in the air, hands in the air, crying, Adrian, after decking Apollo Creed. In a fucking movie that I wrote the screenplay for, that I starred in, that launched my career as an international action sensation, one fucking day I will fly through the sky. I will ride the new MTR line. I will visit temple and learn truths. All audiobooks will be listened to. All Coursera courses finished. I will build castles in the sky out of multicolored Lego bricks, piece by fucking piece. And I will invite all my friends to see. And they will look at me. And they will not say either with their words or their eyes or their silences in between that I am weak. They will know that this day is a victory, not just for me, but for every one of my brothers and sisters chained to their beds every day. This I pray in the altar of my mind. These words I say in the midst of this depression, in this land of unhope, in this meager punishment for a minor crime that no court sentenced me to. In this quirk of a brain, as the minutes of the day turns to sand and wash down the drain, that one day I will breathe the free air. And I will meet my own eyes in the mirror, and I will assume that every man and woman who glances at me in the street is checking my fine ass out. And I have to be but one thing instead today, and that is brave. For today I am scared of invisible thoughts. And that's okay. My future self gives me permission to lie in bed. Wait, nothing is lost because of that soon-to-be day. Instead, play The Legend of Zelda again. Eat an entire jar of Nutella. Call and bitch and cry and scream, or just wait. And pray to my future self, my happiness yet to be, my victories yet to come, that though I walk through the valley in the shadow of death, depression, anxiety, and delusion, thou art with me, my one day.
Yes. Vishal, yes. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
No, it's my pleasure.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.